Welcome to Intentionality with Paul Kempff, the podcast and YouTube channel where we explore the opportunities and possibilities that can be created by a more intentional life. Thanks to those of you that have followed and subscribed on the different channels. Thank you for sharing on social media. Thank you for helping us in reaching more people and impacting more lives. Today is episode 35, another milestone for us and another opportunity to do things completely different. I want to try something today. I want to get people out of their comfort zones. And the first one I want to get out of the comfort zone is myself. So no script for today. We're just going to talk and try and see if we can make an episode out of this. But be warned, there are some other people that I'm also going to get out of their comfort zones today. So today is a solo episode. I'm alone on the famous blue couch, but maybe not. You see, every single episode that I do solo, that I don't have somebody that I do an interview with, there's a few people behind the cameras, my production team. And the people I'm going to take out of their comfort zone today are members of my production team, because I'm going to introduce you to two members of my production team, and I'm going to ask them some uncomfortable questions. So let's start off with the first one and welcome on the blue couch, Karin. Come and join me, Karin, please. Thanks for joining me, Karin. I'm going to try and see if we can take you out of your comfort zone a little bit today. I think it's a good thing.
You just did it by calling my name. That's fine.
And I want to ask you a few questions about this podcast and about your experience that you've had over the last 34 episodes.
Yes, sure.
You're always behind the scenes. You're listening to the interviews I'm doing, to the podcast I'm doing by myself. You hear me talk about intentionality the whole time.
Yeah.
Is there anything I've done in the last 34 episodes that has resonated with you? Anything that you've applied to your life?
Paul, I'm going to pull it back to the podcast itself and the experience of being intentional in creating this podcast. And I've known you for years now, and everything you talk about I've heard before in Friday communications and so forth. And for years now, I've implemented a lot of things that you've given me advice on, and being my mentor for quite a lot of years. So I'm privileged to have years with you. But the experience of being on this actual podcast shifts your way of looking at the word. We actually at home, it's a buzzword now in our home, because obviously we're constantly busy with the footage. Your voice is always in the background in my house somewhere while we're editing. I think we know the beginning intro song. When we hear it, we just think intentionality.
Yeah.
So it's become a buzzword in the house, and if somebody says something, we'll say, are you being intentional about this? And things like that. So in general, I think focusing on the work and being intentional in creating this podcast and, keeping it going. And sometimes it's hard. We all have day jobs. But if you're intentional in something and you do believe in the success of the thing and you believe in the product and we believe in the word, it definitely makes a difference. And I think in that way, the word has a lot of meaning for me, for sure.
I love it. It's the same for me. I've always tried to be intentional in terms of the things I talk about. But it's almost as if doing this podcast is forcing me to be more intentional.
Exactly.
I don't want to ever be accused of being a hypocrite. So when I say people must do certain things, and I'm the one that says it, I kind of like go and say, I've got to make sure that I'm
to do that. That's very true.
So I think the whole experience of being involved in this podcast around intentionality makes you more intentional.
It does. And as I say, going through the footage constantly, we have reminders and reminders of the word and the whole concept of intentionality. And that keeps the thoughts alive. It doesn't help you watch only one video. So I would make a suggestion for the audience to please watch all the videos on intentionality, because it's about repetitiveness, and it reminds you constantly of this concept. So don't miss an episode any week.
Okay, but let's add a warning to that. Those first 10 episodes, go and watch them.
Yeah.
But remember, we were evolving. We were getting better.
So it was tough at the beginning.
It was. It was
definitely tough. But it's good to see that something changes and evolves and get better. That's quite important. We've learned a lot in the last 6 months.
No, I agree with you. So, interestingly enough, your job is not a podcast producer.
No.
That's not what you do.
No.
This is something new for you.
Yeah.
You work in the FFG group.
Okay.
You're the head of systems, head of IT, head of one of our companies called FFG Technology. But there's a lot of other things you also do.
Yeah.
Just briefly share that with us.
Okay. It starts with the following. I get an appointment or a meeting request from Paul Kempff. I walk into his office and he says the famous words, "I have an idea."
Okay.
And then everything starts there, usually. I'm good in implementation. I'm good in figuring out. And I think the experience in IT, because I guarantee you most IT people just know how to Google correctly.
Yeah.
So if you would come to me and say, I want to start a podcast, and I think I've never done this or never know how to build a structure for you, we know where to find the answers. I think it's a thing of inquisitiveness in us to try to find answers. And I do believe I'm capable of doing anything. I like a challenge, and you've been challenging me for almost 20 years now. So it's nice to have, I think you're intentional in the trust with me. It's you believe in me before I believe in that I can actually do it. And that belief sometimes take a person a bit farther, and say, okay, Paul, trust me to do this. I'm going to make it happen. So I love bringing things up, and I've stepped away as producer, and it's been given over to Keanu, and but I will always be involved in background if it comes to support, and I truly believe in this podcast.
That's wonderful. I've got another challenge for you. You and I have spoken about this podcast a lot. We thought about it a lot. Lots of ideas have been thrown around.
Yes.
And one of the things we've talked about is an alternative podcast.
Oh, yes.
One about movies.
True.
So I'm going to challenge you. We must make that big dream a reality.
We should.
And we'll do it soon. But tell me about that dream, and tell me about your love for movies, and why do you love movies so much, and what is it about movies?
I think it's a child. It was instilled in me from a child. I had a grandmother that used to love movies, and we used to always look at movies wherever we had. It was like a family gathering. I was also fortunate to be able to be walking distance from driving, the old Inray, And we used to walk there and watch movies at any time. We used to go to midnight shows and all of that. So I love the art, because the movie is art. The same way as somebody can appreciate a painting, I can appreciate a movie. And my children are also in the industry, and they behind the scenes there, both of them. They're behind the cameras at the moment. So we've always loved not only movies, but the making of the movies. We made a short movie as well, and wherever we can, we try to be creative. And I also love writing myself. So I like a good story in general. And I must say that with my son studying film, we've realized the technicality behind the making of movies and making our own as well. We had a better appreciation of what takes place in filmmaking. And that's why I think it's important to have a podcast where you can show other people that maybe look at a movie more on a surface, to try to get people to look a bit more deeper in the production side of what they've done. One great example is Lord of the Rings. So I'm absolutely obsessed with that movie. But it's more about the practical effects that was involved in that movie. And I'm not counting The Hobbit, too much CGI. But the Lord of the Rings, there were so many practical effects, and it was just brilliantly made. And I think that's where the love of movies for my children also came in, is with that movie. And maybe they watched it a little bit too young, do you agree? But never mind, they also love that whole process of it. And I would love to have a podcast where we can talk about the history of film, and also the way the generations look at movies, the way our generation look at a movie versus our kids' generation. There's always a different perspective. So I would love to do a podcast about that.
All right. Sounds interesting. The challenge has been thrown out.
I've got it.
It's a love and passion that we share, this love and passion for movies. So I'd love to be involved in something like that. I'm going to end off by asking you to give us a tip of the week. Have you got one? It has to probably be a movie.
Yeah, it's not going to be a specific movie. I think it's just a thing of trying to live a intentional life. We tend to be so focused on, motivation and performance and all of that. But a movie for me, any type of movie for me, is sort of escapism, and we need escapism sometimes. And sometimes we always don't need to be serious. You don't always have to look and watch at something that's going to teach you a lesson. Those movies are amazing. But I do think we should sometimes, my tip is just stop, watch a silly movie, enjoy yourself, have some popcorn, because there's not a better escapism for me in the world. So you can just shut down a bit, and be attentive in that movie, write your own critique about the movie after, do a review on a movie, because then you're more intentional in watching your movies if you think that you have to write a review afterwards. And that's the way I love to watch movies, being intentional about what I'm watching.
Awesome. Karin, thanks for joining me on the couch.
Wonderful.
You now have to go back behind the camera.
I'm not comfortable yet, so thank you for the opportunity. I'm just going to get up because I think I know who's next.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get up.
So, Keanu, come and join me on the couch here. Put down the sound equipment, take off your earphones, and join me.
Thanks, Paul.
Very welcome.
Good to be here.
Welcome to Intentionality with Paul Kempff.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
So I'm going to start off with the same question for you. It's been 34 episodes. Today is episode 35. You've been here for almost all the episodes.
Yeah.
I think it's only those first few episodes where you were overseas, and then you joined us afterwards.
Exactly.
What has been your experience of this podcast? What have you learned from Intentionality with Paul Kempff?
Well, look, I think it ties in a lot with what Karin said as well. There's a lot of episodes that I can name that was very inspirational and motivational for me as well. It would be a long list. There would be a lot of guests that I would have to bring out now, but I think everybody played a role in intentionality. And for me, it's, more about the podcast itself. And I wanted to start off by saying that I think seeing things through is very important. And that's kind of what I want to talk about as well. You wanted to start a podcast.
That's right.
And you decided to do it. And you're still seeing it through. And I think that's something to be proud of, to try and see things through to the end. Not just giving up when it gets difficult, but actually working at it and making it better.
I must tell you one thing. I do think that if it wasn't for the encouragement that I had received from you and from everybody in the production team, there's a good chance I might have given up already. So thank you for that compliment, but also thank you for the encouragement that everybody in the production team has been giving me.
Of course. No, I think it's important.
Okay, now we need to go to another subject other than intentionality with Paul Kempff. I want to talk about you. So, Keanu, you are the producer on this podcast. You are our sound man. You are our sound engineer. You're responsible for our sound editing. But you've also got another role. You're also my son. So I just want to say it's such a privilege having you here on the couch, having you involved in this podcast, getting to spend this time with you while we're working on this podcast. But I think there's another level that we want to move to. There's more things that we want to do, and you and the rest of the production team is very involved in that. What do you think is next for us? Where do you think we can still take this thing?
Well, look, I think I'm going to backtrack a bit and just say that there's a lot of times in my life where, I think I want to do a certain thing, and having you as a father as well, it's kind of pushed me to want to do more as well and play a bigger influence in other people's lives as well. And being creative for most of my life, deciding to go into sound engineering as well specifically, I've realized a lot since, especially starting this podcast, that how much my life has changed and the role that I've started playing as well. Becoming the production manager, taking on more responsibility when it comes to that, starting a new journey in a company. And it's been an amazing journey for me. And I think for me, it's about growth, and I think we've grown a lot as a production team, as, from where we started to where we are now. And at no point do we want to stop this progression. We still constantly talk about what can we do to make this better? What can we do to take this even further? And I think for me, that's what's important, is to focus on the growth. So yeah, we do have a lot of plans. We've spoken about maybe even taking the podcast out on the road. I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of possibilities. But we just want to continue getting more guests, getting, more people to use the word intentionality to be more intentional in their lives and grow and evolve as we did as well on the podcast.
Awesome. I love that. Now, I spoke to Karin about her love for movies. You also love movies. We love going to the movies, but you've got something else that you've got a big passion for in your life, and it's what drove you, I think, to become a sound engineer.
Mm-hmm.
You love music.
Yes, I
Tell
do.
me more about that. What role does music play in your life?
Well, look, to be honest with you, I still remember I was around 13, and Tiani, my sister, and you to ask me, like, what type of music do I like? And at that stage of my life, music didn't really play a role, and I didn't really listen to anything. And it was one day when we were driving on the way to school, and you were dropping us off, and there was a song that came on the radio, and I still remember it. It was Thunderstruck from AC/DC.
Okay.
It was the first time I got introduced to rock, and it's sort of, my love for music sort of just grew from there. So I started playing guitar, and I started getting a love of learning music and try to pick up more and more instruments along the way as well. And I mean, I think it's a difficult thing because, you know, you're definitely much more logical, you know, type of person. You know, it's, you love movies and you love your music, but it's not something that's, you know,
not creative.
Exactly.
In that way.
And for me, it's what my entire life has been, is making music, being creative, you know, meeting other creative people. And I think my love for music and the connection that music also gives to other people. I love meeting new people. I love, you know, speaking to other people as well. And music is a great way of meeting new people, you know, going to concerts or open mics, or even just picking up a guitar, like around a fire. You know, you meet all these interesting people that want to jam together and just make music. And, you know, I think it's a great way for people to connect.
Yeah.
I think we've also connected a lot on music and, you know, the journey that we've had.
I agree. And maybe that's a topic for your podcast one day. You know, take the experience, the learnings from this podcast.
Yeah.
Start something around music.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. We have a few ideas, actually, me and my business partner. We want to actually do something like that. So looking forward to it, but I think it will be a little bit more down the line.
Cool. And you've written your own songs.
Of course, yeah.
You've been in a band.
A few, actually, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope that that's something that you can take to the next level in your life as well.
Thank you. I'm still very passionate about it, so I'm hoping so too.
Okay. And I'm proud of what you've achieved so far, and proud of the work that you're doing here on IWPK. Proud of the entire production team. So thanks for joining me today. Let's end off with a bonus tip of the week.
Cool.
Is there something you can think of that you can share with the listeners and the viewers? A tip of the week?
So I think it kind of ties in with what I started with as well. And it's about knowledge. And we've spoken about this a lot on the podcast as well. But I've especially realized this in my life, recently especially. So my tip of the week would be like to live with this ideology that knowledge is power, but without action, it's futile.
I love it. And it fits in so nicely with that definition of intentionality.
Exactly.
Thanks for that, my son.
Of course.
So that's it for this week's episode. Please send me an email to paul@iwpk.co.za if you want to engage. Thank you to the super production team for all your hard work and efforts. It was great getting some of you in front of the camera today. I hope we can eventually get all of you in front of the camera. But thank you for your amazing efforts. Thank you to FFG for their support of this podcast and helping us build something amazing that I believe can have an impact. Congratulate yourself on the decision to have a more intentional life, to be the architect of your own success. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and have an amazing intentional week.
Podcast.